A warm and pleasant evening to all. On behalf of INTANDEM Research Club, I welcome you all to the fortnightly symposium of INTANDEM Research Club of the Department of English, Penmaris College. I'm Mahalakshmi, a first MA English Literature comparer for this delightful evening. We have a theme-based series for this academic year 2023 to 24 titled Interdisciplinary Literary Studies with today's topic Literature and Life Science. To understand any phenomenon, it is useful to know its antecedents. Physician is it useful to know apply this principle when they take a history from their patients to establish a diagnosis. This, from the patients to establish a diagnosis, approach may also be relevant to understanding the body or bodies of literature in the life science, as it is used in such expressions as the epigrammatic corpus when referring to the literary words of the legendary and historic Greek. Such expressions imply an organic nature to the literature and suggest that, like all organic forms, it has gone through a process of evaluation which it can be described historically. It also implies that by studying the evaluation of the medium, we can more easily understand the more complex forms we see today. Today, we have a vibrant keynote speaker, Ms. Sharmila Vaidyanathan, science and environment writer. I welcome you, ma'am. I also welcome the paper presenter, Ms. Sai Shri, lecturer, Department of Science, Fullinfaws PU and Degree College, Bangalore. I welcome you, ma'am. I extend my warm welcome to faculty members, research scholars, and PG students who are present at this forum. I deem it an honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Ms. Sharmila Vaidyanathan. Ms. Sharmila Vaidyanathan is a freelance writer based in Bangalore, India. She explores food entrepreneurship, sustainability, and environmental conversation through her writing. Her work has appeared in Goa Journal, Nature in Focus, Occur Magazine, Webzone, Mold, The News Minute, Scroll, Deccan Herald, and others. We are greatly blessed to have you, ma'am. At today's symposium schedule as a paper presentation followed by the keynote address. Now, I request Ms. Shri, lecturer, Department of Science, Fullinfaws PU and Degree College, Bangalore, for a paper presentation on the topic Literature and License. Over to you, ma'am.
Um, Happy evening. I'll be talking about life sciences and literature. Literature is the mirror of life, and life sciences and literature is personally a very interesting topic to me. Literature is a reflection of life. Whatever be the genre, nature and life plays a huge role in the work of a writer. Literature goes green, the Hindu. Literature has always engaged with nature and environment from a creative and aesthetic approach through poems and more. Is that all? Is adoration enough? Is that enough? Is there a catch? Yes, there is a catch. Representation of nature in literature cannot be limited to adoration alone, but should be realistic too, as far as possible, even if it be fiction. This is a saying by Alison Hawthorne Deming. Clearly, a divide separates the disciplines of science and poetry. There are two different disciplines. Science and poetry are two extremely different disciplines. The divide is as real as a rift separating tectonic plates or a border separating nations. But a border is both a zone of exclusion and a zone of contact where we can exchange some aspects of our difference. And like neighboring tribes who exchange seashells and obsidian, obtain something that is lacking in our own locality. As students try to master integral and differential calculus, organic chemistry, or digital circuits, there is rarely time for creative expression. This is said by Marianne Litch, and these are some of the poems written by her own students. This one is my personal favorite, Nature by D. Lopez. Nature is full of many interesting patterns. We see the exponential growth of a population. We see recursion in the arrangement of seeds that form perfect spirals on a sunflower head. But sometimes we see faces on Cydonia that are not there. We find flower petals that do not follow the dance of the Fibonacci sequence. We hear total silence speak. Life sciences is actually an umbrella. There are n number of fields. There are just so many fields under the field of life sciences. Just some of these are botany, zoology, genetics. Genetics again is an umbrella term. Genetics, ethology. Ethology means the study of animal behavior. Ecology and environment. Environment and ecology are two different terms. As an environment, we put man as the center. Ecology, we study man as a part of the ecosystem. Evolution, bacteriology and virology, paleontology, entomology, immunology, toxicology, and many more. There are many literary works, poetry, novels, movies on almost every branch of life sciences. First, we'll start off with ecology and ecofiction. Ecofiction is ecologically oriented fiction, which may be nature oriented, non human oriented, or environment oriented, human impacts on nature. Ecofiction literature provides a personal narrative and connects us to our natural habitat around us. It showcases not only the environment that gets exploited, but also the human survival that is threatened. Our sustainability itself is threatened when we play with ecosystems. Ecology and Ecofiction Dune novel. This was written and published in the year 1965. Dune is a 1965 epic science fiction novel by American author Frank Herbert. This itself is a multidisciplinary novel. It covers many disciplines. It was originally published as two separate serials in Analog magazine. It tied with Roger Zelazny's This Immortal for the Hugo Award in 1966, and it won the inaugural Nebula Award for the best novel. Dune is set in the distant future. As I said, this is a multidisciplinary novel. It's set in the distant future in a feudal interstellar society in which various noble houses control planetary thieves. Thieves are the central element in medieval contracts based on property holding and feudal law. He tells the story of young Paul Atreides, whose family accepts the supervisory and management role of the planet Arrakis. The planet is an inhospitable, sparsely populated desert wasteland. Now, what is so special about it? It is the only source of melange. It's a spice, a drug that extends life and also enhances mental abilities. Melange is also necessary for space navigation. Not just that, it requires multidimensional awareness and foresight, and this multidimensional awareness and foresight could only be given by the drug. As melange can only be produced on Arrakis, control of the planet is a coveted and dangerous undertaking. Melange is also necessary for space navigation, multidimensional awareness, and foresight. As I already told you, this could only be provided by the drug melange. And this melange can only be produced on Arrakis. hierarchies, so control of this planet is coveted and dangerous undertaking. The novel directly brings forth the multi-layered interactions of politics, religion, ecology, technology, and emotion. The book shows how viewers participate in different phases of the empire, confront each other in a struggle for the control of Iraq and spice. And what's so interesting about this? People have adopted the names of species that are appearing on the novel, names found or discovered in Saturn's moon Titan, ecology and ecofiction, the drowned world J.G. Budd. Fluctuations in solar radiations have melted the ice caps, sending the planet into a new Triassic age of unendurable heat. London's lush tropical vegetation grows up the walls of the rifts, and primeval reptiles are sighted swimming through the newly formed lagoons. Some flee the capital, but others choose to remain either for science or for profit. While the submerged streets of London are drenched in search of treasure, Dr. Robert Kieran, a part of the intrepid scientist, comes to accept this submarine city, but he finds himself strangely resistant to the idea of saving it. There are many more novels on ecology and ecofiction. One on palynology, as in Clean Air by Sarah Blake. Palynology is nothing but the study of pollen grains. This book talks about pollen filled air becoming unbreathable, a world overgrown with trees. The next one is Earth Love by Paul Spencer. It's about eco saboteurs saving rainforests and the last one is Ma'am, am I audible? Am I audible?
Oh, yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
You
ma'am.
can you stop sharing screen also after the
No, there
first
is some
break.
actually it's a technical glitch here.
After the first break, we didn't see that. Then again, it's getting cut.
There's a technical glitch here, ma'am.
Maybe you can just speak about whatever you've prepared if you're not able to share the screen.
No, I'll be able to show it. I tried again, ma'am. It's not an issue.
Okay.
Ma'am, is my screen visible now?
Yes, it is visible.
So, we were talking about Dune, the novel that was published in the year 1965. Since 2009, the names of planets from the Dune novels have been adopted for the real life nomenclature of planes and other features that were discovered on Saturn's moon Titan. Fluctuations in ecology and ecofiction, The Drowned World, J.G. Ballard. Fluctuations in solar radiations have melted the ice caps, sending the planet into a new Triassic age of unendurable heat. London is a swamp, lush tropical vegetation grows up the walls of the rifts, and primeval reptiles are sighted, swimming through the newly formed lagoons. Some flee the capital and others choose to remain for science or for profit. Now we're talking about Robert Karen, part of a group of intrepid scientists. He comes to accept this submarine city, but he is finding it strange. He is finding it strangely resistant to the idea of saving it. And there are many more novels on ecology and ecofiction. The first one here is Clean Air by Cara Blake. It deals with palynology, as in palynology is nothing but the study of pollen grains. It talks about pollen filled air becoming unbreathable, a world overgrown with trees. The next is Earth Love, written by Paul Spencer, about eco saboteurs saving rainforest and palm oil industry. 2047 short stories from our common future. It talks about sustainability, global warming, pollution, how we might or we might not adapt. Ecology and nature poetry. The Eco Poetry Anthology, spread over 700 pages, edited by Anne Fisher and Laura Gray Street. It is an authoritative collection of contemporary American poetry written by a lot of famous and contemporary poets like Emily Dickinson, Wallace Stevens, Wallace Stevens, Elizabeth Bishop, Robert Hayden, and many more eminent poets. A part of the poem, The Occurrences by George Open, the simplest words say the grass blade hides the blaze of a sun to throw a shadow in which the bugs crawl at the roots of the grass. Another poem, Traveling Through the Dark. This poem is uh, a little dark theme, as the name suggests, Traveling Through the Dark by William Stafford, brings alive the meaningless roadside pain that the wildlife suffer. The meaningless roadside pain that the wildlife suffer. By glow of the tail light, I stumbled back of the car and stood by the heap. A doe, a recent killing. She had stiffened already, almost cold. I dragged her off. She was large in the belly, my fingers touching her side, brought me the reason. Her side was warm. Her fawn lay there waiting, alive, still, never to be born. Beside that mountain road, I hesitated. The Jingo Prize for Eco Poetry 2022. Facilitated by the Poetry School, it currently stands as the biggest eco poetry prize in the world. Each poem is an entry that explores the environmental crisis. First, second, third prizes and two runner-ups are awarded to outstanding entries. This is the poem that won the Eco Poetry Prize, Jingo Prize, for the year 2022. And this was written by Anthony Lawrence, titled Red Winged Darter. I can't recall my exact location. The night, a red dragonfly came through the window of my car to settle on my arm. The heart has selective memory, and all coordinates and compass points are more than it can manage when it breaks. But I do remember low slung globes of cloud, the kind my father insisted were faithful predictors of lightning, and large, disfigured stones of hail he called chimney fish on account of the dark cross hatching on the surface, the tapering shape and films of ice. As the dragonfly held fast to the hairs on my arm with its fuse wire legs, I thought of small aircraft awaiting clearance for takeoff, and this, by extension, led to migratory birds on a flyway after leaving winter in Siberia. The red-necked tint, eastern curlew, and whimbrel, who lose more than half their body weight prior to touching down. The dragonfly's wings were shimmering. I would like to say they were lit by neon stars over the street where I had parked outside a restaurant. I'd like to say its arrival was intentional, a messenger with good news, not just an insect that had blown in through a window. My research suggests its name is red-winged darter of the order Odonata, whose appearance has been known to coincide with unusual solar flare activity and times of personal loss. Thunder was turning over its inboard engines, and the sky was throwing the switch to light its dark towers. Did the rain turn to hail and carpet the road? Did the darter make a sound like sifting, as when fine sand is poured from palm to palm, or when long hair is combed repeatedly with tines of tortoise shell? The plain banks of the Niva are grey. The dark Sona flows silently, and the Volga is long and wide. As it flows across the brownish land, the Ebro is blue and slow. The Shannon flows swiftly between its banks. The Mississippi is one of the world's longest rivers. Like the Amazon, it has the Missouri for a tributary. This poem was written by John Ashbery, and it has a descriptive list of the world's rivers. The Botanic Garden, it's a couplet, as in Augustan couplets, and what's interesting is the second part was written first and the first part was written later. It is an annotated scientific poem in Augustan couplets by the grandfather of Charles Darwin, Erasmus Robert Darwin, and William Blake. Wood with long care curcuma, cold and shy, meets her fond husband with averted eye. Four beardless youths, the obdurate beauty move with soft attentions of platonic love. Long care curcuma. There's a wordplay here, as in curcuma longa is the binomial of turmeric. And now in this poem, we are talking about turmeric. Winds of the north, restrain your icy gales, nor chill the bosom of these happy vales. Hence in dark heats, ye gathering clouds revolve, disperse ye lightning, and ye mills dissolve. Hither emerging from yon orient skies, botanic goddess, bend thy radiant eyes. Over these soft scenes assume thy gentle reign. Pomona, Ceres, Flora in thy train. over the frill drawn by thy placid smile effues, and with thy silver sandals print the dews. In noon's bright blaze thy vermeil vest unfold, and wave thy emerald banner starred with gold. The Botanic Garden, a poem in two parts. Cowper, in his foreword address to Dr. Erasmus Darwin, writes a poem describing the pangs of pain of a poet writing a poem. They best can judge a poet's worth, who oft themselves have known the pangs of a poetic birth by labors of their own. Nature in Indian poetry, Toru Dutt or Tarulata Dutt was an Indian poet born in the Bengal province in 1856. Her love for nature is revealed in her works such as Sita, Lotus, Bogmary. Toru Dutt belongs to a period of Indian Renaissance. Cashew nut tree is also the run by Technology Department MCC. So this is also personally very close to me. Cashew nut tree, an autobiographical and nostalgic poem. The poem depicts the tree as her best companion, which soothes her pain and sorrows. The tree is a giant in its huge size, strength, and braveness. In crimson clusters all the boughs among, where on all day are gathered bird and bee, and oft at night the garden overflows with one sweet song that seems to have no close, sung darkling from our tree while men repose. Giv Patel, an Indian poet and playwright, was a member of Green Movement, a group formed by writers to protect the environment. This poem is actually very touching, as in it is not enough for us if we cut a tree. Most or more often than not, we don't find people just cutting a tree. They just uproot it, and this is what the poem talks about. We do it. It has grown, slowly consuming the earth, rising out of it, feeding upon its crust, absorbing years of sunlight, air, water, and out of its leprous height sprouting leaves. It takes much time to kill a tree. Not a simple jab of the knife will do it. The root is to be pulled out of the anchoring earth, or pulled out entirely. The bleeding bark will heal, and from close to the ground will rise curled green twigs. Nature buds will, which if unchecked, will expand again to former size. He also says that nature can heal itself, which if unchecked will expand again to former size. Nature in Indian poetry, Rabindranath Tagore. The night is black and the forest has no end. A million people thread it in a million ways. We have tryst to keep it in the darkness, but where or with whom of that we are unaware. But we have this faith that a lifetime's bliss will appear any minute with a smile upon its lips, since touches, sounds, snatches of songs brush us, pass us, give us delightful shocks. Then, peradventure, there's a flash of lightning. Whomever I see that instant I fall in love with. I call that person and cry, this life is blessed. For your sake, such miles have I traversed. All those others who came close and moved off in the darkness, I don't know if they exist or not. Genetical engineering and science fiction. Jurassic Park. This novel was written in 1990. It is a cautionary tale about genetic engineering, as in it presents the idea of man acting God through the collapse of a zoological park, showcasing genetically recreated dinosaurs. Frankenstein, which is the very first science fiction in English literature, was written by Mary Shelley, is the story of Victor Frankenstein, a young scientist who creates a sapient creature in an unorthodox scientific experiment. Those days, people didn't have much idea about genetics. The Island of Dr. Moreau was written by H.G. Wells. It is the narration of Edward Prendick, a shipwrecked man rescued by a passing boat. He's left on the island home of Dr. Morrow, who's a mad scientist, creates human-like hybrid beings from animals like via vivisection. Vivisection is nothing but performing experiments on live animals and deals with a number of themes like pain and cruelty, moral responsibility, human identity, human interference with nature, and many more. Physiology and science fiction. Frankenstein again happens to be a multidisciplinary novel. The novel also makes use of the idea of reanimation through electric shock to bring the monster back to life, similar to present day pacemakers and defibrillators. Pacemakers and defibrillators are used when people have heart issues, cardiac issues. The Power novel written in 2016, recent novel, a novel by Naomi Alderman. It explores an imagined history of the tumultuous era during which time the novel imagines that women develop electric organs like those of the electric eel. Electrophorus electricus, pardon me, this has to be italicized. Electrophorus electricus is the binomial, creating powerful electric fields with modified muscles. The women across the world develop and share the power to emit electricity from their hands, and this power allows them to become the dominant sex. Bacteriology, virology, diseases, and science fiction. The Scarlet Plague. This is so much similar to what the pandemic that we faced. It's written by an American writer, Jack London, was one of the first examples of a post-apocalyptic fiction novel set in 2073, 60 years after the spread of the Red Death, an uncontrollable epidemic that depopulated and nearly destroyed the world in 2013. Understand that this novel was written in 1912. In the Scarlet Plague, London investigated many traditional issues of the literary topos of plague, ranging from a reflection on morality and justice to the contagion and clinical features of this disease. In particular, the author focused his attention on behavioral responses to a pandemic, showing the emergence of fear, irrationality, and selfishness in a previously civilized and modern society. The book was remembered, as I told you, and read in 2020 as having been very similar to the COVID-19 pandemic. But the difference is once a person comes in contact with this disease, Scarlet Plague, 100% he or she is going to die, as in death is inevitable if the person comes in contact with the disease, unlike COVID, where we had chances to survive. In the novel, at the beginning of the epidemic of Scarlet Death, the people appeared not to be alarmed because they were sure that the bacteriologists would find a way to overcome this new germ, just as they had overcome other germs in the past. However, people were soon frightened by the quickness with which this germ destroyed human beings and by the fact that it is inevitably killed any human being it entered. Thorough details of the course of the illness, London made the plague more realistic and even more frightening. The heart began to beat faster and the heat of the body to increase. Then came the scarlet rash, spreading like wildfire over the face and body. Most persons never noticed the increase in heat and heartbeat, and the first they knew was when scarlet rash came out. Usually they had convulsions at the time of the appearance of the rash, but these convulsions did not last long and were not very severe. The heels became numb first, then the legs, the hips. When the numbness reached as high as his heart, he died. Andromeda Strain. This novel was written and published in 1969 by Michael Crichton. It documents the outbreak of a deadly extraterrestrial microbe, as in microorganism, and the team of scientists investigating it. As a team, recover a military satellite that has returned to Earth. Parasites and science fiction. The Beetle was authored by Richard March. The story is told in 4 parts, each representing the point of perception of a different character. The Beetle is a tale of revenge set in Victorian London. The devotee of an ancient Egyptian religion has tracked her or its target to his home in order to wreak vengeance years delayed. The devotee, seemingly not quite human, is a shapeshifter and hypnotist and uses these powers to manipulate others and escape when necessary. The story is focused on Paul Lessingham, an MP who's making waves in Parliament, is the target of assassination by a terrifying supernatural creature called the Beetle, an inhuman shapeshifter from the depths of Egypt. The story is narrated by Lessingham's friends and acquaintances as the Beetle's machinations put them all in danger, and they must figure out a way to defeat the creature before it's too late. Parasite. The novel was written and published in 2013 by Mira Grant. The book envisages a world with fictional parasites where people's immune systems are maintained by genetically engineered tapeworms. Tapeworms are again parasites which live in the intestine and it causes diseases like caniasis. Novels on other fields of life sciences. Medicine and Healthcare Gateway by Frederick Paul. Symbiosis by Lee Mon. Ethology, Animal Behavior, where the crawdads sing, Delia Owens. Ecology and Environment, Mad Adam, Margaret Eleanor Atwood. Evolution, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Monsters and Aliens, The War of the World, again by H.G. Wells. Man-Eating Plants, The Devil Tree of El Dorado, Phil Robinson. A modern poem. Modern artificiality. Man, woman become clones. Card throughout. Estrogen turns to silicone. Art abounds. Alka's Poetry 2022.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Ms. Sharmila Vaidyanathan, ma'am, to give a view on the paper presentation.
Um, First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of your session today. And I think for me, it was really interesting to see these different examples that Sai Shri has presented today. I've also jotted down some book names that I hope to go on and read. And I think it was also a great context setting for what I want to talk next. So, because this gave a very nice overview of the kind of literature that is out there that delves into science and I think brings science closer to people. So, I think that is those are my first thoughts.
Thank you, ma'am. I request Ms. Sharmila Vaidyanathan to give his keynote address on the topic The Many Layers of Buddhism. The forum is yours.
Thank you so much, and I'll just take a moment to close up my screen.
Yes.
Sorry. Is my screen visible?
Yes,
Yes,
madam.
it is. Yes.
So yes, once again, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I think when I was asked to give a talk at your session today, the first thing that got me thinking was how can I add value to the kind of discussions that you are already having here? And I realized that one of the things that we do in whatever form we write, in whatever we write or the kind of stories that we share is that we try to bring forth a story. So that is essentially what we do. And what struck me from the introduction that I was given about in tandem, and the discussions that you have is you are focusing on interdisciplinarity. So interdisciplinarity for me the stage at which I am in my writing, it's playing a very important role in helping me tell the kind of stories that I want to tell, in crafting the narratives that I want to narrate. So I thought I would reflect upon my own writing journey, and hopefully somewhere in there it will tie in with the kind of conversations that you are having in terms of delving into life science and literature and connecting these two worlds. So just a little bit about me. This visual depiction was done by an illustrator who's based out of Bangalore, Vidya Gopal, when I asked her to sort of represent my writing in a picture, and I think she's done a great job there. So I thought I would add it here. I actually come from a life science background. I have a master's in food science, and then I moved into the world of writing. So before that, I initially, after my degree in food science, I worked in a research in the R&D department of a food company, and somewhere in there I really wanted to write and pursue writing, and that's where the switch happened. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But to pursue writing, I did a diploma in freelance and feature writing from the London School of Journalism, and I have listed down some of the grants and fellowships and symposiums that I have been a part of. Now, this is just to give you an idea again, because here what you're trying to do is talk about an interdisciplinary approach about literature and life sciences. That I think and I didn't know this as someone who was finding her way on her own. I stumbled across these opportunities, and I realized that there are so many platforms and initiatives out there where people are trying to look at various, no, I mean, this is about environment, food, etc., but in general about various issues from different angles. So for example, the Rukma Bai Fellowship, just to give you a little idea about it, this fellowship focuses on women in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But if you go look at the Rukma Bai Fellowship website, you will see that they feature various scientists, women from various backgrounds like aeronautical science or paleontology, geology, women who have excelled in mathematical sciences, etc. But when you read these articles and when you read what is written, you'll hear them talk about, gender issues. You'll hear them talk about sociological issues. You'll hear them touch upon various aspects. So I think, and I that's why I said I wanted to list these opportunities here, just to tell that the conversations that you are having today, it's at a very pertinent time, because everything out there is about having these overlapping narratives and making sure that we have broader perspectives about everything. So my topics of interest are food entrepreneurship, environmental sustainability, agriculture, and climate change. And I wanted to list them here because as I talk about my writing journey, you'll see that it's not that I just decided one fine day and I started writing about all of these topics. I've been doing this for almost 9 years now, close to 10 years. And it's been an evolution, it's been a journey. So I want to take you through that journey and bring you along to where I am now and the kind of stories that I'm writing today. So this is again just an overview of the publications where my articles have been published. And again, this is to give you an idea about how the thing that I said with respect to the fellowships, that we are having the kind of conversations where people want broader perspectives and they want multiple layers in all the dialogues. For example, Hakai magazine is something that focuses on coastal sciences, and the kind of articles and literature that they publish is related to ocean, seas, and everything around it. So if you look at Goya is very food centric. They talk about everything from recipes to history, food, a little bit of food history, and even sometimes food science related articles. Mongabe focuses a lot on environmental issues, and the News Minute, Deccan Herald, Scroll, these are classic news websites. So there is a lot of reporting and journalism there. So if you see, there's a mix of platforms and a mix of conversations that are happening today. So before I move on and talk about my journey and what the topic today. I just want to ask if someone out there wants to just tell me, what do you think what is the first thing that comes to your mind when I say food writing? If you didn't know anything about me and I came up to you and I said I'm a food writer, what would you assume I wrote about? Would anyone like to respond? Okay. Um,
Recipes, nutrition.
Recipes, nutrition. Okay, great. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
So,
I would like to
yeah.
respond. I believe it would be about something about food habits and its ethnicity and from its origin, stories of origin, and everything surrounding it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I mean, I'm really happy with some of the responses. So when as I said, when I began this journey, so I kind of divided the whole thing into three phases. So you would sort of see the evolution, and it would also merge with all the kind of conversations that you're having here. So for me, when I started this journey and I said, okay, I want to write about food, I set up a website called The Yellow Turmeric. It's just a name I came up with. Nothing. There's no big story behind that. But one of the things that I was very surprised is when I went around and told people, "Oh, I write about food." The only thing they could think of as recipes. So they kept thinking, is this a food blog? Can I find recipes? Or at that time, reviews were really, and now I don't know it. I don't find them that often, but in that time, about a decade ago, reviews were really big, and people kept thinking, are you reviewing restaurants? Can you suggest a restaurant? So I realized that people, it was there was this very narrow outlook about food and food related writing and all of that. So when I first started, I said I set up this platform called the Yellow Turmeric. And as someone, the reason I started this is that I was in the sciences, I was in a lab. We used to analyze food and components and all of that. The food industry was coming up with various products, great. But when I looked at the world outside, I saw that people were taking food into their own hands. And by that, I mean they were solving everyday food related issues by coming up with innovative ideas, by coming up with innovative ventures, initiatives. So that was really surprising for me because not all of them had the food background, or so to speak, but they did know exactly what the problem was that they needed to address. So I have put an image here. This is a fruit salad in orange peels, but this is from a startup that I wrote about, which is called Breaky. Now, many of you, I mean, this is a common problem, right? When we live in the cities, breakfast is a huge problem. What do you do first thing in the morning? And in cities like Bangalore, where pre-COVID days, traffic was something that you had to factor in. People would really rush and they wouldn't have proper breakfast, or they wouldn't have a breakfast that was nutritional. So Breaky decided to solve that problem, and they set up this nice startup or initiative where they would provide breakfast. It's a subscription model. You would get a healthy breakfast, not just breakfast, a healthy, balanced breakfast. So that was one thing that I wrote about. I wrote about another initiative called Sampurna Ahara. I think the name is self-explanatory, but this was started by an Ayurvedic doctor, and he realized that when I spoke to him, he said there are so many people who have certain diet restrictions because of various issues, or there are elderly people and they are not able to cook a certain diet for themselves. So these I don't know if it's visible, but these are just basic foods like your kira and brown rice, plant-based foods, and he was providing a meal delivery service. These two, if you look, are slightly similar, but they are addressing everyday food related issues, and I started writing about these people. And then slowly I encountered that there were more aspects to this as I began exploring. So there's something called the Hoodley project that I wrote about for the scroll the news site Scroll. This was started by three data scientists, and Hudli is a small village in Belgaum district in Karnataka. And what they found was the khadi gram there. They were manufacturing various products, including pickles, and a lot of people were leaving the village in and going to cities looking for employment opportunities. So when I spoke to them and wrote about this, what they were doing is they were setting up an e-commerce platform. Basically, they were bringing technology to the village to help the women there who were making these pickles to sell their pickles all across India. The Hoodley project, I don't think it's active anymore, but they set up this nice module where through this website they would make sure that the pickles from Hoodley reached various places in India, and the money that came back helped these women sustain the economy and the ecosystem in the village. Now I know this is not directly related to the conversation that you're having, but this was phase one for me when I did multiple such interviews with various people, and I realized that there's so much more to food. Like when people look at food, they probably just look at nutrition or recipes or reviews or whatever it is, but there are various other tangents, various other stories here, and writing about it is a great way for me to sort of tell people, look, you can look at food from so many different lenses. And when I started exploring that, I realized that you could connect different sciences, you could connect different aspects of your of the environment, of the ecosystem through food, and bring forth very pressing issues. You could tell people about really important issues. Now this is like the second part. So once I started interviewing many of these entrepreneurs, I realized that many of them were probably making a food product in the in when you look at the initiative or the startup, you'll probably see a food product, but behind the scenes, behind the curtains, they were doing a lot more. So this really got me to question the importance of various aspects, food related aspects, environmental related aspects. And food became a great canvas for me to share these sort of to share these topical issues, to share the science behind it, or even various other conversations around it. So one of the articles that I wrote around that time was called "What Does Sustainable Food Really Mean?" Now, when this was published when in 2017, right? And at that time, I think there was even now there's a lot of talk about sustainable food, organic food, farm to table, bringing food from the source and all of that. But what does that really mean? So when I worked on the story, I spoke to a farmer I spoke to someone, sorry, who was working with farmers, and he told me about how it's important. Sustainability starts from the soil, from the actual from the actual farm where it is grown. And then there was someone else who was trying to connect farmers and consumers, and what they were trying to do as a startup, as an organization, is they were trying to remove the middlemen, so they were able to bring farmers closer to the consumers and vice versa. That way, they were able to not only address a supply chain issue, but they were able to tell people, look, this is where your food is coming from. And in turn, they were able to ensure that the farmers get better returns for what they produce. Going further down in the food chain, there's a food chain, right? The food grows, it's packed, it's produced, it's given to someone. I spoke to people who even paid attention to the packaging aspect of it, that it was the kind of packaging material that they used was something that was friendly for the ecosystem. It was biodegradable. So when I started breaking this down, I realized that there are so many layers to it, and so many people are involved, and different people are doing different things. But when not only did I realize that, when you look at it from a broader perspective, there are so many different sciences involved here. There's agricultural science here. There are people who are working on sociological aspects, right? There is nutrition involved here. There are people who are ensuring that good food is what consumers get. So there are so many different layers to this, and that's why I come back to what I said initially, is that food provides such a great canvas to bring these worlds together, to bring people closer to some of these scientific issues, and also these scientific topics, science related topics. So another article here, how much does the food we eat really cost? This was actually based on a report, and to be honest, this was the first time that I got to really experience interdisciplinarity. Like, I could see it on paper, because this report, it basically said that when you look at the food system, a lot of times what people do is they look at how much wheat is grown, what is the yield, right? That is what it is, and how it reaches a consumer and what they cook from it. But they were saying, if you ask an agriculturist, they will say, okay, I need to grow this particular wheat because that is what grows well in this season. If you ask an economist, someone who's into economic sciences, they will say, can I get more from this much land? Can I grow more food? Right? If you ask someone who's into ecology, environmental science, etc., they will say, can the environment in which this food grows, can that be good? Can there be other organisms that thrive here? So when you look at the actual cost of food, there are a lot of hidden costs, because we often don't think of the environmental damage that happens as a result of pushing for too much yield. So without getting into that, let I'm not trying to get into too much of the science, but this is what you're all talking about, right? There's so much out there, and all of these layers play together and come in the form of the final product, which is the food that lands in your plate. So I think this article and this report really opened up my eyes to think for really opened up my eyes and got me thinking about, my god, there are so many different layers to these things, so many different ways in which we can approach a particular topic, and it is important to approach it from various ways and various lenses. So this is another article that I worked on, which was logo, certificate, or awareness. What do organic consumers need the most? And when you ask different people, when you ask a consumer, they'll say, oh, it's great if there is a logo, I know for sure it's an organic product and I can use it, right? But when you talk to someone who comes from a scientific background, who's been studying organic agriculture, whatever, they might have a different take on it. They might say, well, there are so many farmers who've been growing organic food for so many years, and so now if they don't have a logo, does that mean their efforts go to waste? So these kind of approaches help you think beyond the obvious. But what it does, more importantly, what literature and life science, when you start reading up, like, I think a lot of what the examples that she gave, what helps you when you start looking at it in that manner, you don't think in silos, you don't think in a box. Food is not just food. Environment is not just environment. Like, she gave the example of clean air, and I think palynology and pollens, and it's not just about a clean ecosystem where there are a lot of trees, that's it. So there are so many layers that start to sort of reveal themselves. And I think, as individuals, as curious individuals, as human beings who are interacting with the world around, we are interacting with the world around us on a day-to-day basis. I think this kind of reading, this kind of knowledge consumption is very, very important. And especially for something like food, which is so closely tied to us, right? I think this is extremely important. So as I moved forward in this direction, I realized that there's a lot that is published about these issues surrounding food, surrounding agriculture, connecting it to climate change, connecting it to entrepreneurship, everything. There are various things that are published in scientific literature, okay? And what happens then is that, because it's related to food and how it is changing with the environment around us, it's important for people to know, because these are things that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So now, for the most part, for the last 2 or 3 years, what I've been really trying to do is communicate science, and to communicate science to a larger audience, find ways in which I can write about scientific discoveries and publications, and bring that in such a manner that everybody can consume it and understand it. To give you an example, in 2019, they published the Global Soil Biodiversity Atlas. Now, when you think of the term biodiversity, it in general, the definition means that you are talking about a large number of a variety of plant and animals and in a particular habitat. And biodiversity is something within the environmental sciences, ecological sciences, etc., wildlife conservation. Biodiversity is a term that is frequently used, because what they're saying is the more species that thrive, the better the environment, etc. And even when you talk about food and nutrition, there's a lot of talk about biodiversity on the plate. And what does that mean? That means that you have various grains and various fruits and vegetables. You basically have different fruits, vegetables, grains, and other things on your plate, which means it's a healthy diet, and it's also healthy for the environment, because the farmer is not making growing the same thing again and again, without going too deep into it. Now I found this that there was a I found a report about the excuse me I found a report about the global biodiversity atlas. And in that report, they basically said that they measured the health of the soil across the world, and they said that India's soil is in a lot of threat for losing its biodiversity. Soil and biodiversity, what do you mean, right? So when people think of biodiversity, they think of a lot of animals, a lot of plants, or a plate full of different grains. What do you mean by soil biodiversity? So soil is a living substance, and by that, I mean there's bacteria in it, there's fungi in it, there are insects in it, you find earthworms in it, there's so much in it. And when that is all there and thriving and healthy, a lot of good nutrition also gets transferred to the crops and plants that grow on it, which means we also get good nutrition from it. It's all tied. But when this atlas came out, they said India's soil biodiversity is in a lot of threat. I wanted to write about this, but I can't just say, hey, guess what, India's soil biodiversity is in threat. People are going to be like, what do you mean? What is soil biodiversity? Why are we talking about this now? Why is this important? Please break it down, please explain it to me, which is what I tried to do. So I wrote this article called The Essential Science of Soil Biodiversity. And I said, you can see here, gaining prominence is a vital tool for improving food security. So this is why the Earth Journalism Biodiversity Grant was for this story. So the idea here was, first things first is to completely break it down and make the science palatable to people. So I went and spoke to a scientist and I asked them about what is soil biodiversity, what do you mean by all of this. So he broke it down in layman's terms. He explained that there are so many other living beings in the soil, and he talked about his own lab where they measure some of these things. And then I went and spoke to a farmer who's always been very mindful of his soil. So this farmer, he's not educated, but he knows that it's important to have good soil, a thriving soil. So he said, you know what, I make sure that there are enough insects in my soil. When I lift the soil, he didn't give me any scientific ways of measuring it. He said, oh, when I lift the soil and drop it, it should be wet, which means if it's too dry, which means nothing can grow in it. So it falls, it doesn't fall like sand. I see some earthworms in it. I see bits and pieces of leaf in it. So I took his inputs. Then I went to an agriculturist who grows plants, who grows fruits and vegetables, I'm sorry, on a large scale. Like he has a website. He sells directly to consumers through the website. He's established like a proper business chain. He's an agriculturist. And this person was also very, very mindful of his soil practices. And what he told me was how he makes his own manure, how he took me to this large, they have this big pit in their farm where they make the manure and all of that. And then I spoke to someone who grows chocolate in a small farm. He took it over from his father, and he said the first thing I did was completely stop chemical inputs, and I made my entire farm healthy and all of that. So if you see, there are different sciences at play here. There are different people who are doing different things. But when you put it all together, you get a story that people can easily consume, and they can relate to the subject, because now it's closer to home, because now you know that you're talking about the soil on which my food grows, and this food is what I eat. So whatever happens to the soil happens to my food, and that in turn affects me. So I think this was a great learning experience, and I'm sharing this with you because it was a tremendous learning experience for me to understand how I have to do this. If I want to take a topic that is slightly, I wouldn't say convoluted, but up there, and has all these jargons and is full of data points, and break it down and share it with people. This is how you do it. You go to different people, you get and a very people from different disciplines, different sciences. You break things down and then you make it more palatable. So I'm going to give you another example, and this time I'll show you just bits and screenshots from my article. Now, this is a paper that was published in Urban Forestry and Urban Greening. It says patterns of urban foraging in Bangalore city. Now, foraging, as you is generally going and looking for edible sources of food, right? Urban foraging is something that climate scientists especially, are really talking about, because they're saying, now when you think of foraging, if you say, oh, you have to go pluck a fruit or something, or a green or spinach, you usually think of a remote setup, a farm, a village, somewhere, some place somewhere, right? You don't think of stepping out of your apartment complex and picking something from the side of your road, right? You wouldn't do that. So urban foraging is something that climate scientists are pushing for, because they feel that if we start thinking of cities like that, where you could just forage for food, you could pluck greens and cook them, or you could pluck fruits and eat them, then you will start thinking of cities differently. You'll start factoring in more green spaces, which will in turn have an effect on the environment. You'll also start looking at the urban landscape differently, because you'll not litter that much. If you're going to pick the green and cook it, you'll definitely not spit there or throw garbage there. So it has so many implications. So now this study, this is a research article. They looked at urban foraging. They looked at, there is foraging happening in Bangalore city. Where is it happening? Who's doing it? And how is this benefiting them? So again, this is a scientific publication, but it conveys a very, very important message that the city dwellers can definitely start thinking about. And then I took this story and I wrote an article on it, which is the role of urban foraging in building climate resilient food systems. There is a little bit of food science involved here. There's some culinary science involved here, and there's definitely a lot of environmental science involved here. So for this story, I spoke to a scientist who actually participated in the original research. She's and she said that the interaction between people and nature in cities has increasingly come into focus. So because now people are thinking about how cities can become greener, cleaner, and how we can build cities that are also part of our entire how do I say this whole fight to reduce the impacts of climate change. So in that case, urban foraging becomes a very important way, because you're directly interacting with that plant or as a food source. So I spoke to her. I spoke to someone else who's an urban landscapist, and he works with someone who's into culinary sciences. So what he does is he takes people on, in Delhi, this is, he takes them through this through a particular, in a particular garden. He shows them what plants are edible, what plants you can consume and eat, and what you shouldn't eat. And then they pluck those plants, they learn about them, and then they take it to a restaurant and they actually cook with it and they eat. So he's showing them the entire life cycle, that if you actually start doing this, you have a meal that is ready. And then I spoke to someone who runs this Instagram account. All she does is uh, she disseminates, she gives information to people. She takes photographs of like a tree in Bangalore or a plant in some remote corner in Bangalore, and she says this has this medicinal value, this is this herbal value, this can actually be eaten when you have a cough or a cold, etc. So she is someone who's studied women's studies in Tata Institute, social sciences. And one of the things that also became clear through this study is that women from underprivileged backgrounds are the ones who are mostly foraging in cities like Bangalore. So there's a social science angle to it. There is again a gender angle to it. So when you start sort of pulling across these, you just start looking at things through these different layers, it's not only fascinating, it opens up a whole new world of conversations. You can talk about so many different aspects, so many different issues through just one single topic. And I think that is fascinating, and that is what I'm trying to do now. I'm continuing to do that through various stories, and I hope to do that more, because I see that the more this kind of information gets shared out there, right, people really are interested. They message me and they ask me things. After this urban foraging, there was someone who actually asked me if they could connect with Shruti, who runs the Instagram account, and they wanted to ask her about a particular plant that grows in their backyard, and they're like, I think this is edible, can I start cooking with it? These kind of yeah, these kind of sorts of cause and effect, it's really great, and it's fascinating, and it's wonderful to experience that as a writer. So this is an example of some of the stories that I've worked on, and I think this also gave you an overview of how my writing journey has come to where it is. Today I'm heavily focused on putting forth stories with various voices, with an interdisciplinary approach, ensuring that science is, I wouldn't say watered down, I'm not watering it down, but science is made easy for others to consume, and they're able to also relate to these topics and engage with these topics. But there are so many people who've been doing this for so many years. I'm just giving you some book examples here. There is Bread, Wine, Chocolate, The Slow Loss of Foods We Love. This is by Simran Sethi. She is a journalist. And this book, for me, it was also a very, I would say, an important book, because after I read this, even I started thinking about writing something like this. So she talks about how climate change is impacting foods that we really love, like chocolate, foods that we eat every now and then, like bread. So what's happening to the wheat, what's happening to the cocoa? She travels all over the world, she meets cocoa farmers, she even comes to India, talks to farmers in Punjab, and about the amount of pesticides that they're using to grow wheat. And it's really beautiful. It weaves together storytelling, weaves to science, um, food, nutritional science, all of it in such a wonderful way that you won't even realize that when you're reading this book that you're actually consuming so much of science. This is a very interesting book by Shobha Narayan, which is Food and Faith. So here she travels through various religious places across India, and she talks about the food that is tied to that place, and that brings about a very different kind of, this is not life science, but I just thought I would introduce it here. There's a lot of anthropology in it, how people in religious settings interact with the food. Food is such an important part from a cultural aspect, right? It's You just cannot talk about food and not talk about the kind of cultural connections we have to it. So I just wanted to put this book out there to tell you that there is another side to food writing, and this is a great example of it. And then there is Mariam Reshi, The Flavor of Spice. This is again a very interesting book where she talks about various spices, that we engage with on a day-to-day basis, and then she takes you through a little bit of the history of it, or how it's grown and where it's grown now and who's growing it. There's cinnamon, saffron, nutmeg, mace, cardamom, clove, asafoetida, fenugreek. So you will stumble across a very interesting fact about a spice that you just take for granted. You'll just throw it into your oil, and suddenly you'll read something in there that it's very, very, how do I say this, it really makes you start thinking even about the small things that go in small quantities in your food. I'm sorry. So I'm just going to read one small line from it. Considering how all pervasive spices are, it is rather surprising how little is known about them. Ask the average grocer anywhere in the country where the cumin he's selling comes from, and he'll answer with a bored shrug. So she talks, it's that's what she's trying to tell you. Like, you don't think about where your cumin is coming from, you don't think about where your nutmeg is coming from. So she's saying it's spices are so important, but we give it so little thought. So this is a cup of coffee, right? And this is based on an article that I just finished working on. So that's why I wanted to conclude on this. It's just a cup of coffee. Many of us drink this every single day. We meet people over coffee. We invite people for coffee. But if you start looking into this cup of coffee, you'll find that there are so many different aspects to it. There's an agricultural aspect to this. There are coffee beans, farmers who grow this, who want rains at a certain time so they can pick the beans and then dry it. Right? Coffee is dried and then it's processed. So there's climate change. If it rains in an untimely manner, they lose some of the beans, which gives them a lot of loss. There's cultural aspect to it. We all drink coffee the way coffee is made, and there's a lot of talk about, how coffee, when coffee was first introduced. I'm sitting in Karnataka. There's the Baba Budangiri hills here, and that's where apparently the first 7 beans were sown. That's how the coffee came in, and then it became this drink that everybody was drinking. And it has such a huge cultural impact on our day-to-day lives. There's also conservation. So there's conservation science here. So a lot of you may or may not know, but traditionally coffee was grown under the shade of trees, and which means these trees also provided like a home for birds and various other animals, right? But because we wanted to increase coffee yields, and this happened under the colonial influence when Britishers took over India, they cut massive forests. And that's why we are facing some of the issues that we are facing with the climate and in the coffee agriculture today. So there is also conservation. Now people are going back to planting native trees and growing coffee in them, which means other things also survive, and not survive, flourish along with the coffee. And the farmers have alternate incomes through pepper and various other agricultural commodities. So I think what I really want to say, and the reason I'm concluding like this, is as a group of people who are curious, who are reading so much, who are discussing about the many aspects of literature, the importance of interdisciplinarity, I urge you to look at things through these different layers, to read more diverse topics, to read more diverse subjects, to see how a particular topic is broken down, and it has these various voices. And I think it's really important what you're doing here today, and it really helps people like us who are trying to tell these stories and take it forward. So with that, I'd like to end. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Sharmila. So far all that you said was voiced by biophysicist Vandana Shiva. I don't
Yes,
know whether.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes, and I mean, I think one or two of your articles
Uh-huh.
resemble. I mean, I was thinking of her articles
Right, right, yes.
in the Resurgence
Yes, yes.
magazine. Yes, when this and then. I mean, for a freelance writer who, I mean, I never thought freelance writers when thinking like this. So I'm so happy that there are people. For us, we started, when I started thinking on the environment, I started reading Fukuoka's theory, all that kind of theories in agriculture, all these things basically because I was interested in
Right,
all this. Even
right,
today, when I go back to Kerala, I look up
right,
I mean, what do you call these economic crops,
right,
especially not pepper.
right,
Today they are focusing on rubber and the orchids, the vanilla, and
right,
other things.
right,
Right?
right,
They give up coffee, but they give it up. They give up all these things when it doesn't fetch money. So only when money is a criterion. Now this the groundwater has been affected because of rubber.
right,
So, so all these things, are connected. Nobody cares. They have so much of a thing which they don't use.
yeah,
We have to grow things that we can use and
right,
sing because they don't have somebody else to work For in the urban areas, we are trying to grow things in boxes, and I mean in pots, so
Right.
that we can have something to pluck
Right.
for a kitchen garden. But in the I mean in the other what do you call, in the rural areas, people are waiting for what do you call, uh, manpower to work, so that they
Yes.
can get high yield. So
Yes. Yes.
nobody's
Yes.
focusing
That's a
on this.
that's a very beautiful. Thank you. I think that's
Mm.
also labor is a big aspect of all.
Yes, labor.
Yes,
That's
I think
one.
that's also something that often gets weaved into these narratives, and that's very, very important to talk about because, again, is your food sustainable if the person who's working in the estate not making enough,
Yes.
right? It's not. So, yeah,
That's one. And then I've suggested one book. I don't know. Yeah, not for bread alone. Have you read it? I think it'll be
I
good. It'll go with the collection you just gave.
thank you so much. I
Yes, so
haven't read
great.
that, but I will make a note of it.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
just from the past to the present. You have some
Yeah.
all kinds of things are
Yes. Yeah,
yes
and I
about.
have made a note of the Dune and Clean Air.
Mm,
I would really like to read them as well.
yes.
Are there any other questions or?
Students, you have any questions? You can even, yeah, you can even tell her how much you liked the paper or what you liked about the paper, about her presentation. And Sai, that was also a very nice thing. Towards the
She
end,
gave
actually,
she
yeah,
gave us a very comprehensive account of all under all
yeah,
titles. She gave us enough to read up.
yes.
Yes, some of them I've never heard about. The old ones, yes, but the later ones
Um,
I've never heard of also.
she gave us a
Yes,
good reading list. So
yes.
also, Ms. Sharmila. And of course, tea. You talked about coffee, tea, the there again the plantation economy.
Yes.
A word that comes to mind is consumerism. So how
Yes,
consumerism,
yes.
we need to be more ethical about it. And
Yeah.
No. To
Yes.
put in a green is selling. I mean, people are making money out of green.
Right.
Okay, that we say we call greening. That is also that has become terribly consumerist today. So, I mean, even all what you call corporates talk about greening. I don't know why, in what way they are greening. Just because most of them, but one thing is they leave their most of them leave their engineering and go and do farming. So that's one good thing that comes out of.
Yeah.
But they too make money, right? Even in eco farming, they're making money. So this is what I was just thinking. So are we just living sustainably or just enough for ourselves? Okay, or maybe to distribute to a few others. Are we planting them on the roads? There was something idea about planting fruit trees on the road so that people who need food, right, oranges and other apricots, apples in some I read about it in some it's, I think it's in US. So they were trying to say that people can come and collect it. How many of them would allow here if we did? Even drumstick that grows on the roadside, people, poor people are not allowed to pluck it, and those who need it, right? Or even if there is one, they will pluck the whole tree down. They may not care for, looking, what you get, caring for it. That is, so all kinds of things we have to think of when we try to do all these things. No, there are so many aspects to it.
Yeah.
Sharmila, I
Yes.
started my service in Walajapet, halfway between Bangalore and
Ah,
Chennai.
okay.
And I do remember, coming back to Chennai on the weekends, and the roads on either side would be full of tamarind trees.
Right.
Now the highways department has got, with the new structure of highways, we don't see any trees at all.
Right.
So
Yes.
hi- earlier, the long drives were for us to the one of the attractions was to look at the beauty of nature. But now with the way highways have come up now,
Yeah.
They've not only cut down the trees, and these tamarind trees, poor people would collect the tamarind.
Yeah.
It all belonged to the village panchayat and something like that. There was a system there
Right.
where
Right.
that was harvested, that tamarind was harvested, and people used it. All those things are going out.
Yes, absolutely.
I think more of community living
Yeah.
probably could take us back to.
Yeah,
Uh,
and there is community living and thinking of common green spaces, spaces that are common to all, where you can grow. Like you said, the tamarind that grows there is for anyone and everyone, right? So I think those urban commons are something that people are really looking at from various ways. So this again comes from an urban landscaping, from climate mitigation, from food aspect,
No,
everything.
you earlier we used to find all these plants, no, that were herbal and all on the
Right.
side of the roads growing up with. Then they clean it, no. This, I mean, I've noticed here as well as in here we don't have everything is tarred in Chennai. Everything is tarred up. So in Kerala they used to, I mean, periodically clean it up fully. So people are telling that that itself is a very bad work, because all those but I mean, plants that are really what they call the dasha pushpam, no, the 10 what you find in literature, many of those, so they were all, every one of them is a medicinal plant, and those are all, gone. All of it is gone. It's not at all available.
Right.
So it's
It's unfortunate.
Yes, just a word to the students. So it's very important at this time for people who have interest in literature to take interest in science also. If
Yes.
you actually want to make a contribution to the world, to make a difference to the planet, you have to understand science and connect science and your artistic sensibilities to speak for what matters in the world now. I
Yeah.
I just hope
Well,
I said
no,
yeah,
that's
this
conveyed
is the book
Sharmila.
I wanted to
I,
show, I hope.
I just want to say that's why I listed some of those symposiums and
It's
fellowships.
very interesting book. I mean, I had mentioned that. No, this is,
Not
Yeah,
for bread alone.
yeah.
nice. I'll
Hmm.
definitely look that up. Now, I was just saying that there are a lot of opportunities for the for literature students to delve into something else and write about it, or I don't know, in research about it. So please do look up. I think, like I said, the world we live in now, we don't have to stick to just that one track.
Sharmila, may I introduce Dr. Rufus? He's also a
Yes,
patron along with
please.
Srilata.
Hello, ma'am. Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for that wonderful talk. It was
Thank,
really a revelation,
thank you
an
so much.
eye opener for us, and the fact that you've been writing on something that is connected with literature, food writing.
Right.
Awesome, ma'am. Really awesome.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would also like to thank, I don't know, Joshua is here. He was the first person.
Joshua, sir.
Yeah, he reached out to me. So thank you for this, because otherwise I wouldn't be talking into
I
this.
was just wanting to ask who brought you in into this group.
Yeah.
Uh, we have to
Yeah.
thank Joshua for most of
Uh,
our speakers, actually.
yeah.
Hmm. Dr. Rufus is also into environment and literature.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's really
Hmm.
nice to have someone from that background here.
He's an MCC,
Right.
Professor
Yes.
Christian College, Associate Professor of English.
Oh, that's really nice. It's really nice to know people
Yes.
who, that you are teaching this on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
Yeah, that's, I think that was that eco literature that got us all into it. But I don't think we will come into that area unless we are really interested in
I know.
plants, even otherwise. Plants or that kind of
Okay, just a,
gardening.
yeah, yeah, correct. Yeah. No, I'm
Yes.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you there. You were saying?
Mm. That's what I'm just saying. Unless you're interested in that area, you never.
Right.
So I have all kinds of things growing in my that. What is that? I mean, little all wayside plants. No, those things also growing up in my garden. In my terrace. I love it to grow because I mean it has to be there. saw somebody searching for a plant. The cats will, the Kupameni Kira and all, no, they
Oh,
cats will be searching for that. So it's allow it to grow here and there. When I see, when I notice something like that,
yeah, yeah,
so I just
yeah. It's
So
very
when we were small, if we had any bite or anything, insect bite, we used to put
yes,
that
Kupameni.
coppermine.
okay.
Those who had liver problems and all that, that other plant, no, which I don't know what they call it in Malayalam, they call it
Yeah.
the kunukitati and all. They say that it has that all those little kira. I mean kira nelli. Yes, they
Ah,
call it
yeah,
kira nelli. No, yeah, that we have.
yeah.
And then what they use for ponnangani, white and yellow.
Right.
Mm.
Right. All those things they just grow in my along with my other plants. I allow it to grow because somebody somewhere asks for
Absolutely.
this. Nobody allows it to grow on the road.
Yeah.
Even the tumba plant. Earlier we used to find it on the road all the time. My eyes will be on the sides and all, picking up these things.
That's
Thank you, Joshua, for yet
Yes,
another
I
great
know for
speaker.
bringing us to Sharmila Vaidyanathan. I've
Oh,
since I don't read Deccan Chronicle. I don't get. You don't write for the Hindu.
I haven't. I haven't still
Uh,
found
but
something
since
apt for the Hindu. But I would definitely like to
no,
write.
no, but I didn't see the name. No, I mean I read the Hindu only
Yeah,
most of
yeah.
the time. So
So that's something a lot of people. I think if I get a article in the Hindu, then I can say I've made it, because I think a lot of people ask me that. Isn't you haven't written for the
no,
Hindu?
I don't know. I don't know whether that is right. But I happen to read only the Hindu, and so I didn't find you. That's all. Okay, it doesn't.
No, no,
You don't have
definitely.
to be there.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
think. Oh, it's
I
No,
think
great.
you've
it's
already
nice.
made it.
I'll
Yeah,
study.
you've
You've made
already
it with the
made it.
Oxford
Yes,
scholarship that you've
yes.
got.
No, no.
You've
So
already made it.
you've won so much, and then you've done so much.
No, at the moment, I'm mostly writing for Manga Bay. And if you are interested, I think
This Resurgence magazine and all that you don't write.
I haven't gotten an opportunity. So, a lot of the time, it is about finding the right story for the magazine, right? Because they are looking for something, you want to write something. So, it has to be a match. So, that's what I was.
Her article looked like something that would go there. That's why I asked.
I see. I'll definitely explore that. Thank
Okay.
you for sharing that.
But you tell stories. I mean, you put it in the form of stories also.
Yeah, yeah. I
But
haven't written fiction, but mine is
mm,
mostly non-fiction reportage and
mm.
the kind of article.
There's one friend of my son's who does one small young girl, Aparna. I don't know. She writes about turtles, that olive ridley turtles and
Yes.
things like that. Aparna.
Can you
There's
give
a
me her
small.
last name?
I don't know her last name. She's a friend of my son. She,
No, but
I mean, comes home once in a way. I don't know. I'll ask.
to look that
We'll
up.
get the contact for you, Sharmila.
Yeah, okay, okay. I'll get you the. I mean, I'll send it to
Sure.
Preeti. She's interested in this area, so she writes. She chooses to write. She's a very young thing, but she
Okay.
chooses to write on this kind of
I
things.
see. No, I think seen an article
Mm.
with that name. That's right.
She's just making it. I don't think it's great. She happened to mention it to me because my son told her my mother's interested in all this, so that's how she mentioned it. I think you only people like you can reach out to in other ways, through newspaper and all that, to reach out to many other. When we tell it through our research and all that, I keep distributing plans. I keep telling it to all I know, and then they say she's mad about plants. That's what they'll say. I mean. My mother, she's mad about plants. Now they talk only about plants. That's all. I mean, that's how they say. Or how
Mhm.
much of, I mean, what kinds of butterflies you see, what kind of beetles you see
Yeah.
in your garden. It's so nice to, I mean, even I mean, taking photographs of all those little things.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not really organized or, I mean, really interested. Just put it out there for as a curious
I see.
thing.
I wish to thank you, Sharmila, for
Yeah, she's so
taking the opportunity.
happy to have met
It was
her.
wonderful.
Huh?
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
You stay in Bangalore all the time? You don't move over to Chennai or?
Uh, Basically from Chennai. There is
Oh,
a
Oh,
this, but I'm in Bangalore. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. But yes, I just want to say this is great what you're all doing. Please keep having these conversations, and
No,
it's
we
really
have
nice.
we have subjects, no, in teaching in
Right.
college. At least I'd be happy that that is included in the curriculum. So
Right.
we have the green studies and all that.
Yeah.
Um, so this that makes them aware. And in MCC, Dr. Rufus would say they would. I think the whole lot of people who started it out here,
Wonderful.
they
Yes,
would
that's
take
right.
students out on. I mean, I think you go on eco tours also, no?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. From the Mr. Narasimhan and all from botany department, quite a
Yes,
few of those days I used to. They used to tell me to join the group,
exactly.
Very
so
nice. That's really nice.
they do.
Yeah.
Yes, he has an organization called Center for People, Plants, and the Environment. I guess Dr. Narasimhan.
Oh, that's
That's
wonderful.
So
Dr. Narasimhan.
yes,
Okay.
Can you,
so
sorry, can you say that again? Center for People?
people, plants, and the environment.
Wonderful.
So yeah, it's called
He's
PPP. Yeah.
still in service.
No, ma'am. He's now in Bangalore. I think he's now with IIS, Indian Institute of Science.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's been working there for the past 2 years since his retirement. But he comes here occasionally. Last week also he called me up
Where is Dr.
because
Nirmal now?
Dr. Nirmal is in Saliyur, Tambaram. He's in Tambaram. Uh,
Okay.
yeah. He's also occasionally, he also organizes these tree walks occasionally.
Okay.
So once in a while they come to campus.
Dr. Nirmal Selmani. Okay,
Yes,
he's
Dr.
another
Nirmal.
person. Through all these people only I got to know. And there's a whole lot
Yes.
of people in Trichy also, all National College, no? Trichy?
Yeah, Bennett is
Yes,
there, Dr.
yes.
Suresh
Bennett,
Frederick is there.
Suresh, Frederick,
Exactly.
all of these people. When
Yes.
that environment movement, what's that, OSLE,
Ah, yes.
ASLE, and ISLE, and all that started,
Exactly.
interdisciplinary studies in literature and environment. I think these were the people, MCC. And Dr. Nirmal Salmani was the one who was, I think, going about it from 1992. I mean, I think, yeah, he was
Yes.
going to various classrooms at the university. I've listened to him talking on various aspects of it. That Tinai concept, right? And that,
Exactly.
that is Dr. Nirmal Selmani, who I think he's written a massive amount of work on that.
Yes.
So
That's true.
he used to tell us you have to spread the word. That's what he used to tell us from the
Exactly.
yes, spread the word, get more people going. There were a whole lot of people then. Now I do not know how many are there for environment in MCC.
The junior crop are there, ma'am. There are a
Uh,
few who are there who are passionate about
uh,
environment and literature.
Suze and
Yes.
Deborah and all of them went away. No,
Yeah,
they
they,
that
they are in bits now. Rajasthan.
uh,
Bits in Rajasthan. Sorry, bits in Goa.
there's quite a lot of activity actually going on in Chennai. So, I mean, I don't know,
Yes.
but we didn't know about the freelance writing and this. I see occasional articles in the Hindu, and I mean, I do read about those. But I'll be just thinking that that is selling now instead of creating too much of awareness. It is selling. How many of those children? I mean, children who go on. I mean, there are, I think, organized tours and all that park, but it ends there. The message should be carried no home. Yes, it must live with them.
actually, when we had the farmer suicides, and they represented in Delhi
Mm,
that very graphic representation of their cause. There was a video that was going around. Says that with the message of that video was the most important thing is the most important people are the farmers because you can. I think there was this journalist who was interviewing people and asking who are the most important people in society,
mm,
right? And then he was quizzing young people, and then he helped them to understand. He did he you know he had this deductive approach, and he deduced that the most important people are the farmers. So what if you can have all the money in the world and not have food on your
Food
plate?
on a plate.
So, because you can't, it could come to that if we neglect the farmers.
Yeah,
So
true.
In fact, to add to what Preeti ma'am said, I recently wrote something on my LinkedIn page. King Ashoka planted trees on
Tree.
either sides of the
Yes.
roads. I think that's almost a long gone history, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes.
Probably 10 years down the line, in the name of advancement and modernization, I don't know. I mean, and I think that's one of the important things that people have to write. And we see people talking about planting trees and things like that. I remember one of the popular Tamil comedian Vivek went on planting trees. He was on a spree, right? But even today in cities like Bangalore, especially in universities, we see people giving mementos as plant saplings, right?
Yes.
So, but then the point is, how much of it does really go into,
that's
right?
right.
Because
No,
are
as
we
wedding
are we
gifts, when they
yeah.
take, no, they will look if there's a rose plant or something and they'll take it. The rest were all, in one of the weddings recently, and that child brought about 4 or 5, I mean, I think 6 or 7 of those plants, gardenia actually there. They were, and he said, I mean, it is, what is it? Nandyar Vatam. He said, and nobody wanted it. It is there. So much we had to return as return gifts. When plants were given, they were not interested in taking it.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
Sure.
so I think
in, yeah,
it's become more of a facade, right?
yes.
Not really in practice, but only to propagate the fact that yes,
No,
we are
but
also
another thing
environmentalists.
is there is no place for people to plant, and nobody would even consider having a pot. Who will take care of this? See, you can have 4 and 5 dogs, right, in a house, and they can bring them up inside an AC room. They said, why can't you keep a plant? That is growing in, I mean, the dogs, I mean, 5 or 6 or 7. But I mean, there are, contrary to this, there's another, one of my cousins. She has actually no way, but she has 5 or 6 dogs, and at the same time, she has a whole lot of plants. She can't afford it. She's gone into a bigger house so that she can, I mean, she can afford these plants also. So that way, if you make a balance of all of this, it's all right. You know why those plants? I found out those dogs, no, they breed, and those dogs go for a high, very high. They can be sold for a very high amount.
Commercial.
Yeah.
In fact, even before we could conclude, I have a public request to Sharmila. If there's a
Mhm.
possibility that if you could spare some time, come to Chennai to Queen Mary's College, and if there is a possibility of giving a workshop, especially on
Mm.
Wow.
organic farming, that would be wonderful. So please just take this
Thank.
as a public request.
Oh, thanks, Joshua. You seem to read my mind, and
Yeah, and they have a big campus where
yes,
many
please
things
come.
can be done.
I'll
And I think even MCC we must visit.
Yeah,
Uh,
MCC
we
is
are we are all
literally
we are
a mini
cousins.
forest, right?
Yes.
We are cousins of MCC.
Yeah. Uh,
Thank you so much for that. I'll
mm.
definitely keep that in mind. I'm not sure if I'm qualified enough to give a workshop, maybe just a talk, but thank you for that.
Sharmila, before I forget, I wanted to tell you, we had, every Wednesday we have an assembly hour in college, just 10, 20 minutes or so. So principal or visitors are able to talk to all 5,000 students. That's the objective. And we had this person, I forget his name, I can get it for you. He was into planting nungu. He's
Oh,
on a Nungu planting mission, and he spoke about the attributes of Nungu. And one of the things is it holds the water in the soil. So you can promote soil water content. What's the term for that? You can yeah, more
No,
more water in the soil if you plant. Yes, sir.
No, they don't plant it, Preeti. It just grows by itself. In
Yeah.
Tenkasi,
No,
I
but
just
since
met.
it's since no,
Uh,
since it's becoming extinct, it's
ah,
becoming extinct. He's working on that. He's in IIT. This person.
mm.
That's wonderful. Okay.
Earlier, you
Mm.
see the road. I mean, when you step from the borders of Kerala into Tamil Nadu, the palm trees lining the palmyra trees are all over. No, the Western Ghats. It starts off like that
It's
from
not
there.
extinct. It's getting depleted,
Yes, they cut it off.
drastic
They don't
depletion,
bother.
because wastelands. Because it used to grow on wastelands, right? When you travel
Mhm.
by train, you used to see a whole lot of
See,
palmyra,
nobody
and
ever plants. I mean, this what do you call? Like you plant a coconut sapling, nobody plants it. It just falls. It grows.
but
It
now
grows
they are
there.
into planting because it will
Ah.
propagate after that. They have some
Mm.
a thing about how many they are going to cover in so many hectares and all that.
Mhm. In Tenkasi, I just saw they had put it all along. They allow it to grow on the borders of their. I mean, whatever their farm is, they have that, and inside the farm they have, of course, other things, fruit trees and all that. But they allow this to grow. So they asked us
Um,
if we want nungu for, I mean, we'll cut and give because it's within reachable thing. No, so it's so nice and refreshing when you say you will get coconut or nungu on a hot day, right? To get all that. That is not available now. No.
I think Mahalakshmi, we can
Mm,
ask her to
yes.
propose a vote of thanks. It has been a very interesting discussion.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Mm,
We have
mm.
come to the end of the session. I deem it an honor to propose the vote of thanks. I thank our keynote speaker, Ms. Sharmila Vaidyanathan, for sharing a valuable insight on literature and life skills. Thank you, ma'am. Our college principal for constant support. Dr. Maria Priti Srinivasan, and Ed Department of English, providing various research opportunities to the research. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank our visitor, Ms. Sai Shri, for sharing his insights. Thank all the staff members and panelists who are present at this forum. We will meet again after a fortnight on 1st December 2023 with the topic Interdisciplinary Studies, Literature and Animal Studies. Thank you all.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you once. Yes.
Yeah,
Thank
Harry,
you.
I don't know whether it's possible. They wanted to do that here, but in Kerala, there are people who are trying to grow these. In no time